So my name is Zoe Mers, and I did my presentation about intimate relationships, the good and the bad, and just learning different aspects of those. So the main purpose of this was that I decided to interview different couples from different backgrounds and ages and just different dynamics, just to kind of learn more about those types of relationships, kind of starting with how they met, how long they've been together, to how they communicate, and some difficult times they've been through, and how that has strengthened or weakened their relationship. So they all brought something different to the table, and it was basically just to learn about, the purpose of it was to learn about the unhealthy and healthy relationships and how their communication is working for both. So I chose this as my final presentation to wrap up everything. We talked a lot in class about intimate violence, but what we talked a lot about is intimate relationships and how that pertains to that. So I think people have so many different relationships, and just how they deal with their different relationships and the dynamic is so interesting. So I just thought it would be a cool way to present this and kind of do that. So how the interview process happened was I interviewed seven couples who were in healthy relationships and 7 couples who were in unhealthy relationships. I asked about 20-something questions, and some of the questions were just about how they met, their history. I kind of had a screenshot of the question. So it started with, how did you meet your significant other? And then I start asking them about the history of their relationship, if they had any expectations. I asked them to share some of the difficult times, what's something enjoyable they've done together lately, what are some qualities they like about their significant other, and stuff like that. I also interviewed couples of unhealthy relationships or couples that already had ended, and kind of explained why they think the relationship ended and all of that. So I also interviewed couples of different ages and backgrounds so I could get different answers. And I truly do believe that no couple was the same in this. And, having different couples who have a different dynamic and stuff like that, it really helped get me these different answers. So the background of the different couples, I only had a few on here, but for the unhealthy couples, I had a woman who was 35 and a man who was 42, and the relationship ended because the man had no control over his life, so he kind of just felt like he wasn't able to do anything, and he just didn't like that. I also had a woman who was 23 and a woman who was 21. The 23-year-old could not do anything without making her partner mad and felt like she was walking on eggshells. So she was constantly worried to go home and kind of didn't feel safe in a way because she didn't know if her partner would be mad that she went out with her friends or something like that. And so she was kind of just tired of that. I also had a woman who was 22 and a man who was 21, and it ended because the man was constantly abusive towards the woman, and she finally got out. Luckily, she is safe now, but, the abuse happened for a year or two, and for a really long time, she thought she could change him and make him better, which is why she stayed, and she just realized that she had to do this for herself, and although she did love him, it's not worth it, and so she did get out. And then I also had a man who was 21 and another man who was 21, and their relationship ended because one of the men was constantly stalking the other one. And so basically, it started with, oh, let me get your location on your phone. And then it went to, okay, I'm going to follow you every time you leave the house just because I don't trust you. And so it did get really bad, and luckily he was also able to get out of the relationship. So for healthy couples, I have a woman who is 46 and a man who is 56, and they were together for 26 years, but they've been married for 12, and it wasn't their first marriage, so they had both been married before. I had a woman who is 46, a man who is 58, together for 12 years, and they are engaged. They both have been married before as well. I had a man who is 23, a woman who is 21, and they've been together for 3.5 years, and they are both engaged. 2 women, ages 23 and 21, and they've been together for 2 years, and they live together. And then I had a man who was 20 and another man who was 27, and they've been together for 9 months, and they live together. So I had a lot of differences in answers. One of them was that since I interviewed people of different ages, they're going to give different answers. The way people are and the way they grew up, a lot of it depended on, what year they were in and, how they explain these answers. One thing that I thought was very interesting was when I asked them the definition of a healthy and unhealthy relationship, a lot of people's definitions of when they were in unhealthy relationships, how they described an unhealthy relationship was different and, in my opinion, wrong, just because I think since they were in an unhealthy relationship, they couldn't give like a realistic definition. So I thought that was really different. The men and women answered these questions completely different. You know, sometimes the women gave me these amazing answers when it came to the history of the relationship that you could put in a textbook. It was just, or you could write a book about it. It was beautifully spoken. But what I found more interesting was when asked the question to a lot of men about, give me some good qualities you like in your partner, they were complimenting their partner amazingly, and it was just something I had never really heard before. The couples who had been together the longest are not always the happiest, but that doesn't mean they are unhappy. So I felt like a lot of the couples who had been together, 10 plus years, told me a lot of struggles they had been through versus couples who had only been together a few years. They hadn't gone through a lot of struggles. And at first I kind of felt bad for the couples who'd been together for so long, because I'm like, oh, if you've gone through these awful struggles, how are you still together? But it was just them learning to deal with the hardships and learning how to communicate. And even though one of them might have gone through something, in one of the couples, they'd gone through a really bad depressive season for someone. And it was just kind of learning how to communicate through that, where now if that happens again, they know what to do and they know how to say it and they know how to talk to one another without hurting one's feelings, but just dealing with some issues they might be facing. So I thought that was really interesting. So this relates to the course because we've learned a lot about intimate partner violence, and I think although this is an intimate violence course, it does relate to intimate relationships, and using what we've learned from IPV to just scope out what a healthy and unhealthy relationship is. Although I'm not an expert, I think I'm pretty good at now kind of knowing more of the signs. Before taking this course, I never thought about the power control wheel. I maybe had heard it once, but didn't really know much about it. So it was definitely interesting to see this. And I know every time I was talking to an unhealthy relationship, I kind of thought of that wheel and kind of seeing what aspects of the power and control wheel dealt with this. And then also most of the modules on this course, or in this course, I used in this interview, dating violence, intimate partner violence, stalking, and sexual assault. They were all found in some of these relationships, which is the basics of what we've talked about in class. I think the only thing that wasn't talked about was marginalized populations and, like, the elderly. So it was just interesting that that is all used in a daily, this is just a day-to-day relationships and something that's happened. So now I just have some statistics that I found were really interesting. So girls and young women between the ages of 16 and 24 experience the highest rate of intimate partner violence, almost triple the national average. 81% of parents believe teen dating violence is not an issue or admit they do not know if it is an issue. I thought that was crazy because it's such a high percentage, and it's just like this stuff is happening every day. You see it on the news. So it's like, why would you not believe that this is not an issue? You need to open your eyes and just realize that it can happen to anyone. 1 in 3 adults in the United States is a victim of physical, sexual, emotional, or verbal abuse with a dating partner. Violent relationships can have serious effects on someone at a younger age. It can put someone at higher risk for substance abuse, eating disorder, risky sexual behavior, or continued abuse. 57% of college students say it is difficult to identify dating violence. 58% they do not know how to help if someone was experiencing it. So I think that just goes back to when it happens at a younger age. Like, this is something we should be talking about every day. It needs to be taught in schools. I know it's like very serious topics that maybe parents would be scared that their kids to know, but it's like you see it on the news, you see it happening all around you. I think the more it's talked about, the stigma can go down and people can help, and we can stop having the bystander effect and start having upstanders and people being there to go in and stop something, and they wouldn't feel scared because they would know exactly what to do. So I think we need to start talking about it in grade schools and high schools and then continue the conversation in college. So my takeaway in this is that all relationships are so different and do not fit in one mold. I think as a society we have a problem of making it like this is the perfect relationship because of A, B, and C, when like no one is the same, and we have to stop putting people in these molds because it's just not right. I think you need to pay attention to the signs if you or someone else you know is in an unhealthy relationship. Kind of like what I said earlier, it just needs to be talked about more. Times have changed and will keep changing, so the way relationships are will change. This is just kind of a thing I've noticed. The way dating is now is very different from when my parents were dating. Now it's all on social media and it's all on the apps, and there's so many ways you can get to know a person, but it's also scary because you could know someone, or so you think, online, and that's not who they are as a person, so you have to be really careful. And then one thing that will continue to stay the same is how you treat a human and the respect they deserve. I think we all just need to, or not all, but people in relationships just have to be careful and just respect one another. And, if you aren't happy, get out of it. And if you can't get out, find someone you trust and just talk to them. And there's so many different resources that we have, which is incredible, and it'll just keep changing. So, thank you.